one careful brick at a time. The divorce 2 years ago had gutted him. Not the loss of Marilyn, who'd left him for her personal trainer, but the realization that he'd spent 8 years married to a ghost. She'd never loved him. She'd loved his potential, his rising career as an architect, the suburban dream he could provide. When a better offer came along, she'd vanished like morning fog. He'd moved from Chicago to Portland for a fresh start. The house on Willow Creek Drive was perfect. A 1920s craftsman, he'd restored himself, pouring his heartbreak into crown molding and original hardwood floors. It was his sanctuary, his fortress against the world. Every morning at 6:30, he left for Morrison & Associates architecture firm. Every evening at 7 o'clock, he returned to silence and solitude. He preferred it that way. The mailman, Spencer Johns, usually just left packages on the porch. But this Tuesday afternoon, Spencer flagged down Nolan's Audi as he pulled into the driveway. "Mr. James, got a minute?" Spencer was in his 50s, weathered face showing concern. "What's up, Spencer?" "Look, this might be nothing, but—" Spencer shifted uncomfortably. "I deliver packages to your house maybe 3 times a week. You're never home. But there's always a woman who answers the door." Nolan's stomach dropped. "What woman?" "Pretty thing, brunette, maybe 35. She signs for everything. Even knows your name, acts like she lives here." Spencer pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. "We take pictures for proof of delivery. Look." The images showed his front door, his welcome mat, his porch furniture. And in several shots, a woman Nolan had never seen before, Carrie Butler, according to the signatures. Dark hair, confident smile, wearing casual clothes like she belonged there. In one photo, she held his mail. In another, she was laughing at something Spencer said. "How long?" Nolan's voice was barely a whisper. "I went back through my logs. 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. She's there every time." Nolan's mind raced. 6 weeks. While he worked late nights on the Henderson project, while he spent weekends at his office, someone had been living in his house. Playing house. In his home. "Have you told anyone else?" Nolan asked. "No, sir. Figured you should know first. You want me to call the police?" "No." Nolan's voice was cold, calculated. His architect's mind was already designing a plan. "Don't mention this to anyone. Keep delivering like normal. Can you send me those photos?" Spencer nodded, thumbs flying across his screen. "Just sent them." "Mr. James, you sure you don't want?" "I'm sure. Thank you, Spencer. This stays between us." As the mail truck drove away, Nolan sat in his car, staring at his own house like it was a foreign country. Through the curtains he'd hung himself, he could see lights on. Movement in the kitchen. His kitchen. He drove to the Hilton downtown and checked in. That night, he didn't sleep. He reviewed the photos Spencer sent, zoomed in on every detail. The woman wore his late mother's apron in one shot. His mother's apron, which he'd kept in a box in the attic. This wasn't some random squatter. This was personal. Nolan called in sick to work Wednesday morning, the first sick day in 3 years. He parked his Audi 2 blocks away and walked back, positioning himself in his neighbor's thick hedge line with a clear view of his front door. At 9:47 a.m., a silver Toyota Camry pulled up. The woman from the photos stepped out, carrying grocery bags with the ease of someone coming home. She had a key. She'd made a key to his house. Nolan watched through binoculars as Carrie Butler let herself in like she owned the place. Through the windows, he tracked her movements, putting away groceries, adjusting the living room curtains, watering the fern he'd forgotten existed. She moved through his space with intimate familiarity, touching his things, existing in his life. At 10:15, another car arrived. A man, mid-40s, athletic build. Clay Floyd. According to the custom work shirt he wore, Floyd contracting. He kissed Carrie on the porch. Not a friendly peck. A lover's kiss. They were a couple, using his house as their nest. Nolan's hands shook with rage, but he forced himself to stay calm, to observe. Clay stayed for an hour, and through the windows, Nolan saw them laughing, eating lunch at his dining table, sitting on his couch. Clay's hand was on Carrie's thigh. They looked happy. Disgustingly, perfectly happy. After Clay left, Carrie remained. She did laundry. Nolan could see her hanging clothes in his backyard. His backyard, with the garden he'd planted, the fence he'd built. She was living his life, or creating some twisted version of it. At 4:30 p.m., she locked up and left in the Toyota. Nolan waited 10 minutes, then used his key to enter his own home. Everything looked normal, but wrong. The coffee maker was still warm. There were 2 plates in the dishwasher. She'd even done his dishes. The bathroom had women's toiletries lined up next to his. The bedroom made him sick. The bed was made, but there were indentations on both sides. His side and someone else's side. In the closet, behind his clothes, he found women's outfits. Dresses, blouses, jeans. A whole wardrobe. In the nightstand drawer, beneath a book he'd been reading, was a photograph. Carrie and Clay, arms around each other, standing in front of his house. On the back, written in feminine script, "Our forever home." Nolan photographed everything with his phone. In the home office, his desk had been rifled through, papers rearranged. His filing cabinet showed signs of forced entry, amateur work, but effective. What had they been looking for? In his kitchen junk drawer, he found receipts. Dozens of them. Furniture deliveries, electronics, home goods, all ordered to his address, signed by Carrie Butler, charged to credit cards he didn't recognize. They'd been using his address for some kind of scheme. The doorbell camera. He'd installed one 3 months ago, but barely checked it. Nolan pulled up the app on his phone and scrolled through weeks of footage. There she was, coming and going like she lived there. Sometimes with Clay. Once with another man, older, nervous looking. They'd had a heated argument on his porch. Nolan downloaded everything to cloud storage. Evidence. He needed more. He set up his laptop in the office, angling it to record the living room. Hidden camera apps, motion activated. He placed his iPad in the bedroom bookshelf. Another in the kitchen. Then he left, locking the door behind him. Back at the Hilton, Nolan didn't call the police. The cops would arrest her, sure. But that felt too simple, too clean. She'd invaded his life, his sanctuary, the one place he'd felt safe after Marilyn destroyed him. She'd made him feel violated in his own home. No, he wanted answers first. Then he wanted justice. His kind of justice. Thursday morning, Nolan hired a private investigator, Willie Kemp, a former cop recommended by his attorney. Within 6 hours, Willie had a full dossier. Carrie Butler, 37, former real estate agent, divorced. Last known address, an apartment in Beaverton, evicted 4 months ago. Credit score in the toilet, multiple judgments against her. Clay Floyd, 42, owned a contracting business that went bankrupt 18 months ago. Currently working odd jobs under the table. The couple had been together 2 years, living in Clay's truck for 3 months before showing up at Nolan's house. How'd they target you? Willie asked, spreading photos across the hotel room desk. I don't know. I've never met either of them. They knew you worked long hours, knew you lived alone. This wasn't random. Willie tapped another photo. Carrie with the nervous-looking man from the doorbell footage. This guy's Anton Bishop. Low-level con artist. Did time for fraud. If Bishop's involved, this is bigger than squatting. Nolan's video feeds proved Willie right. That evening, he watched from his hotel as Carrie let Anton into the house. The audio wasn't perfect, but he caught enough. 3 more weeks, Anton was saying. Then we clean out and disappear. What about the owner? Carrie's voice, anxious. He's never here. Perfect mark. Divorced, workaholic, probably depressed. He won't notice until it's too late. Clay's getting nervous. He thinks we should cut and run now. Clay's an idiot, Anton snapped. We've got $80,000 in merchandise charged to fake cards using this address. When it all arrives, we fence it and split. You two get your cut, I get mine, we all go our separate ways. But only if you hold your nerve. A credit fraud operation. They were using his address as a drop point, building fake identities, running up cards, and collecting goods to resell. Nolan's pristine credit, his established address, his predictable schedule. He was the perfect cover. But there was something else. The way Carrie looked around his house, the care she took with his things. The photo labeled, Our Forever Home. I like it here, Carrie said quietly. It feels real. Like we could actually be normal people. You're not normal people, Anton said. You're a broke divorcee with delusions and a boyfriend who can't hold a job. This is business. Don't get attached. After Anton left, Nolan watched Carrie sit on his couch, crying. Clay arrived an hour later, holding her. We'll get our own place, Clay promised. Soon as we get paid, we'll have enough for a fresh start. Somewhere no one knows us. Nolan felt a flicker of something. Not sympathy, but understanding. They were desperate people doing desperate things. But they'd chosen to invade his life, to violate his home, to steal his peace. And he'd just heard them confess to major fraud. He called Willie. I want everything on Anton Bishop. Every associate, every scheme, every weak point. And I want to know when the next big delivery is coming to my house. You thinking what I think you're thinking? They want to use my life to fund theirs? Let's give them more than they bargained for. Nolan's voice was ice cold. I'm going to show them what happens when you steal from the wrong man. Nolan spent Friday creating the blueprint for his revenge. As an architect, he understood structures, not just buildings, but systems, patterns, weaknesses. Every structure had a load-bearing wall. Remove it correctly, and everything collapsed. Willie's additional research revealed the scope of Anton's operation. He'd been running the same scam for 3 years, using different houses in different cities. He'd find desperate couples, promise them a cut, use their labor and faces while he stayed in the shadows. When heat got too close, he'd disappear and leave them holding the bag. He's got victims in Seattle, Sacramento, and Phoenix, Willie explained. Same pattern, broke couples, empty houses, fake credit cards. He's made over $500,000. Why hasn't he been caught? He's smart. Never uses the same identity twice. Never stays in one place too long. And he picks marks who won't notice. Travelers, remote workers, people going through life changes. Willie paused. Like you. Nolan's jaw tightened. After the divorce, he'd been a ghost in his own life. Working 70-hour weeks, avoiding friends, isolating himself. He'd made himself the perfect victim. But there was another thread. Willie had found something odd. Carrie Butler used to work for Prestige Realty, Willie said. Guess who else worked there 8 years ago? He slid a photo across the desk. Nolan's blood ran cold. Marilyn Pitts, his ex-wife. The woman who destroyed him. They knew each other? Nolan's voice was hollow. Co-workers for 2 years. Carrie was the rookie, Marilyn was the star. Carrie got fired for faking property listings, trying to scam commission. Marilyn testified against her in the company investigation. Nolan's mind spun. So this is revenge? Carrie's getting back at Marilyn by destroying me. Maybe. Or maybe she just knew you'd be vulnerable. Marilyn could have mentioned you during their time together. The architect husband, the nice house, the predictable schedule. Carrie's desperate enough to remember details like that. Personal. It was all personal. Carrie wasn't some random criminal. She was connected to the worst period of his life. She'd taken his vulnerability, his pain, and weaponized it. The rage Nolan felt crystallized into something colder, sharper. Purpose. I need you to do something, Nolan said. I need you to set up a delivery. A big one. Something that'll make Anton think he's hit the jackpot. Willie grinned. What do you have in mind? I'm an architect. I design spaces for specific purposes. It's time to design a trap. Over the weekend, Nolan worked. He created fake confirmation emails for a massive electronics delivery, $40,000 worth of high-end laptops, phones, and cameras, scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. He made it look like an Amazon business order, the kind Anton's operation loved. Hard to trace, easy to fence. But Nolan added special instructions. Signature required from resident, photo ID mandatory, delivery window between 2 to 4 p.m. He needed them all there. Anton, Carrie, and Clay, to sign for the jackpot. Willie had a contact at the freight company. For $500, they'd play along, deliver dummy boxes, and document everything. While setting the trap, Nolan discovered something else. His home security system log showed Carrie's car had been there every single day for 2 months, but Clay's vehicle only appeared 3 times a week. The other 4 nights, Carrie stayed alone in Nolan's house. The doorbell footage confirmed it. On nights when Clay didn't visit, Carrie would cook dinner in Nolan's kitchen, eat alone at his table, watch TV on his couch, and sleep in his bed. She'd walk through the rooms touching his things, his books, his photographs, his architectural sketches. Once, he watched her cry while looking at a photo of him and his late mother. She wasn't just running a scam. She was living a fantasy. The stable home, the normal life, the things her bankruptcy and bad choices had stolen from her. She'd taken his house because it represented everything she'd lost. It didn't make Nolan forgive her, but it made him understand how to break her. Monday morning, Nolan went back to work. He acted normal, focused, professional. His colleague, Ernesto Garner, noticed something different. You seem better, Ernesto said. More focused. I am, Nolan replied. And it was true. For the first time since the divorce, he felt alive. He had purpose. He was fighting back. That evening, Nolan watched through his laptop feed as Anton, Carrie, and Clay gathered in his living room. They were celebrating. Anton had gotten the fake confirmation email Nolan had crafted and believed the big score was coming. 40 grand, Anton was saying, pacing excitedly. 20 for me, 10 each for you too. That's enough to disappear forever. What if something goes wrong? Clay asked. He looked nervous, sweaty. Nothing's going to go wrong. This address is perfect. The owner's a ghost. By the time he figures anything out, we'll be in Mexico. Carrie was quiet, standing by Nolan's bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines. What if he comes home? He won't, Anton snapped. He works until 7 o'clock every night. Deliveries at 2 o'clock. We sign, we load, we're gone by 3 o'clock. But Carrie looked troubled. She picked up the photo of Nolan and his mother. Did you know his mother died last year? Cancer. He kept all her things. So, Anton's voice was cold. So he's a person, a real person, not just a mark. Don't get soft now, Anton warned. You need this money as much as I do. Or would you rather go back to living in Clay's truck? Clay put his arm around Carrie. Baby, we're so close. One more day. Nolan watched Carrie nod, but her face showed doubt. Good. Doubt was a crack in the foundation. Tuesday morning, Nolan called in sick again. He positioned himself in a rental car across the street with Willie, professional cameras ready. At 1:45 p.m., all three arrived. Anton in a box truck, Clay in his pickup, Carrie in her Toyota. At 2 p.m. exactly, the freight truck pulled up. The driver, Willie's contact, a mountain of a man named Don Robles, knocked on the door with a clipboard. Carrie answered, signing as Mrs. James. I'll need to see your ID, Don said, per the script. Carrie showed her driver's license. Don photographed it. And you're Mrs. James? Yes. Strange, license says Butler. Anton appeared at the door. She's using her maiden name. I'm Mr. James. Let me show you my ID. Anton produced a fake driver's license, but Don had photographed everything. As they signed for the boxes and started loading them, Willie's cameras captured every moment. Their faces, their cars, their license plates, their fake IDs. Got everything? Nolan asked quietly. Every frame, Willie confirmed. That's identity theft, mail fraud, and credit card fraud on video. Anton's going away for years. Not yet, Nolan said. Let them load the boxes. Let them think they won. The trio worked fast, loading Anton's truck. They were laughing, relieved. Clay kissed Carrie. Anton was counting money in his head, probably already planning his escape. They drove away at 2:47 p.m., thinking they'd pulled off the perfect crime. Now what? Willie asked. Now we follow them to wherever they're storing everything, Nolan said, pulling out behind them at a safe distance. And then we take it all back. Anton led them to a storage facility in Gresham, a rundown place with minimal security. Unit 217. They unloaded the boxes, still celebrating. Through binoculars, Nolan watched them high-five, watched Carrie cry with relief, watched Clay promise her a better life. We could call the cops right now, Willie said. We have everything. Not yet. Nolan had a better idea. That evening, while the trio celebrated at a bar, Willie had planted a GPS tracker on Anton's truck. Nolan made phone calls. First to Detective Kirby Ross, Willie's former partner in the fraud division. Nolan laid out the entire operation, the video evidence, the fake IDs, the storage unit, everything. You've done our job for us, Kirby said, impressed. We can arrest them tonight. I need you to wait, Nolan said. 48 hours. I want to make sure they can't wriggle free. What are you planning? Justice. Next, Nolan called a number Willie had provided, Oliver Petty, an investigative journalist who specialized in fraud cases. Nolan offered him an exclusive, a full expose of Anton Bishop's multi-state fraud operation, complete with video evidence, victim testimonials, and the full paper trail. This is Pulitzer level, Oliver said, excitement in his voice. When can we meet? Thursday morning. Give me until then. Finally, Nolan did something unexpected. He called Marilyn Pitts, his ex-wife. Nolan. She sounded shocked. It's been 2 years. I know. I need to ask you about someone. Carrie Butler. You worked with her at Prestige Realty. Silence. Then, God, I haven't thought about her in years. She was a nightmare. Liar. Thief. Tried to steal my commissions. What? She's been living in my house for 2 months. Running a fraud scheme. Using it as an accomplice. Jesus. Marilyn actually sounded concerned. Nolan, are you okay? I'm handling it. I just wanted to know. Did you ever mention me to her? My address, my schedule. Maybe. We had lunch a few times. I might have complained about you working too much about the house. God, Nolan, I'm sorry. If she used that information. She did. But it's not your fault. And surprisingly, Nolan meant it. I'm taking care of it. Do you need help? I could. No. But thank you. He hung up. Wednesday, Nolan went to work like normal. But he'd set one more trap. Using Anton's own playbook, Nolan created a fake buyer, a fence willing to purchase all the stolen goods for $50,000 cash. Willie posed as the buyer, setting up a meeting at the storage unit for Thursday night. The email went to Anton's encrypted account, using the same dark web channels Anton used to sell stolen goods. The bait was irresistible. A clean sale, no questions, cash money. Anton took it immediately, confirming for 7 p.m. Thursday. You're setting up a sting, Willie realized. I'm setting up a reckoning, Nolan corrected. Thursday arrived. Nolan called Detective Kirby. Tonight, 7 p.m., Gresham Storage, Unit 217. They'll all be there, with all the evidence. Bring everything. We'll be there, Kirby promised. Oliver Petty, the journalist, was positioned across the street with a camera crew. This is incredible, he said. The story of the year. At 6:45 p.m., Anton, Carrie, and Clay arrived at the storage unit. They opened it, revealing not just Nolan's dummy boxes, but months of stolen goods, televisions, computers, jewelry, all the evidence of their crimes. At 6:55 p.m., Willie arrived in character, wearing a wire. You, Anton. That's me. You got the money. Show me the goods first. As they conducted the fake transaction, police surrounded the facility. At 7 p.m. exactly, Detective Kirby and 6 officers moved in. Nobody moved. Police. The scene erupted. Clay bolted and was tackled immediately. Anton tried to run, but Willie clotheslined him professionally. Carrie just stood there, frozen, hands in the air, tears streaming down her face. As officers cuffed them, Nolan stepped out from behind a storage unit, into the light. Carrie saw him, and her face crumpled. You, she whispered. Me, Nolan confirmed. Detective Kirby gave Nolan 5 minutes alone with them before processing. The 3 criminals sat on the ground in handcuffs, surrounded by the evidence of their crimes. Officers held back, giving them space. Nolan stood before them, hands in his pockets, utterly calm. You lived in my house, he began, voice steady. You slept in my bed. You ate at my table. You used my home like it was yours. We needed, Carrie started. I don't care what you needed, Nolan cut her off. You knew I'd been through a divorce. You knew I was vulnerable. And you exploited that. You violated the one place I felt safe. Anton glared up at him. Big deal. You're rich. You have everything. People like us have nothing. I worked for everything I have. I rebuilt my life after my wife destroyed it. I chose to trust the world again, to leave my door unlocked in a metaphorical sense. And you punished me for that. Nolan crouched down to Anton's level. You want to know the difference between us? When life knocked me down, I built myself back up. When life knocked you down, you decided to tear others down. That's why you're in handcuffs, and I'm not. He turned to Carrie. You knew Marilyn. You knew about me through her. Did you think about that when you were living in my house? When you were wearing my mother's apron? Carrie's face was wet with tears. I'm sorry. I wanted to feel normal again. To have a home. Then get one honestly. Get a job. Rebuild your credit. Earn it. Nolan stood. Instead, you chose to steal mine. And now you'll spend the next few years in a different kind of home. Clay spoke up, voice desperate. Man, we were gonna leave. We weren't gonna hurt anything. You already hurt everything, Nolan said. You hurt my sense of safety. My trust. My peace of mind. You took something more valuable than any television or laptop. You took my sanctuary. And that's something you'll pay for. He nodded to Detective Kirby. They're all yours. As officers led them to separate patrol cars, Nolan stood with Willie, watching. Feel better? Willie asked. Getting there, Nolan said. Oliver Petty approached with his camera crew. Mr. James, can we get a statement? I'm a private person, Nolan said. But yes, people need to know this happens. That thieves don't just steal things, they steal peace of mind. They steal the feeling of home. And they need to know that sometimes, victims fight back. The interview aired Friday night. By Saturday, Nolan's story was national news. Architect builds the perfect trap for home invaders, read the headlines. Oliver's expose revealed Anton's entire 3-year operation, connecting him to dozens of victims across multiple states. The legal proceedings moved fast. With Nolan's video evidence, Willie's documentation, and the seized storage unit, prosecutors had an airtight case. Anton Bishop was charged with 47 counts of fraud, identity theft, and mail fraud across 4 states. Federal charges. He was looking at 20 years minimum. Clay Floyd took a plea deal. 3 years, testimony against Anton. In exchange, prosecutors went easier on him. He's not the brains, the DA told Nolan. He's just stupid and in love. Carrie Butler's case was more complex. Her attorney argued she'd been manipulated by Anton, that she was a victim too. But Nolan's videos showed her full participation, her knowledge of the scheme. She'd signed for packages using his name. She'd lived in his house knowing it was wrong. The hearing was in week 3. Nolan attended, sitting in the gallery. Carrie's attorney called her to the stand. Ms. Butler, why did you participate in this scheme? Carrie's voice was small. I was desperate. I'd lost everything. My career, my savings, my apartment. Clay and I were living in his truck. Anton offered us a way out. He made it sound simple. Victimless. Did you know it was wrong? Yes. She looked at Nolan. I knew. But I told myself the homeowner wouldn't notice, that he could afford it, that it wasn't really hurting anyone. I was wrong. I see that now. What do you want to say to Mr. James? Carrie's composure broke. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I'm sorry for violating your home, for stealing your peace. You didn't deserve what we did. Nobody does. I was so desperate to have what you had that I didn't think about what I was taking from you. I'm sorry. The judge was unmoved. Ms. Butler, desperation doesn't justify theft. It doesn't justify fraud. You made choices, and choices have consequences. 6 years, with the possibility of parole after 4. As they led Carrie away, she looked at Nolan one last time. He saw genuine remorse there, but also resignation. She knew she deserved this. Outside the courthouse, Willie met Nolan. That's all 3. How do you feel? Like I can go home, Nolan said. But there was one more piece of business. The house needed cleansing. Nolan couldn't just walk back in knowing they'd been there, knowing their presence had contaminated his sanctuary. So he did what architects do. He renovated. He hired Ernesto from work to help redesign. They ripped out the carpet Carrie had walked on. They replaced the bed, the couch, the kitchen table. They repainted every wall, installed new locks, upgraded the security system. Nolan kept some things, his mother's apron, the books, the photographs, but everything else got replaced or refreshed. Starting over? Ernesto asked as they worked. Reclaiming, Nolan corrected. This is my home. I'm taking it back. The process took 3 weeks. When it was done, the house looked similar but felt completely different. New furniture, new colors, new energy. It was his again. The insurance money from the fraud case helped. Anton's assets were seized and distributed among victims. Nolan got back $12,000, enough to cover the renovations. But the real victory wasn't financial. 6 months later, Nolan sat on his new porch with Willie, drinking beer as the sun set over Portland. You ever think about them? Willie asked. Sometimes, Nolan admitted. Anton's a career criminal. He'll probably die in prison doing what criminals do, blaming everyone but himself. Clay's weak, but maybe prison will wake him up. Carrie. He paused. Carrie made terrible choices, but there was a person under there. Maybe she'll come out better. You're more forgiving than I'd be. I'm not forgiving. I just understand that revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's about taking back what they stole. They stole my peace, my home, my trust. I took it all back. That's victory. Willie nodded. Speaking of moving forward, you hear about that new architect at your firm? Jerry Fleming? Ernesto says she keeps asking about you. Nolan smiled. I've heard. You gonna ask her out? Maybe. Eventually. Nolan looked at his house, his home, his sanctuary. But first, I'm going to enjoy this. Being whole again. Being safe again. You earned it, Willie said. And he had. Nolan James had faced his demons, outsmarted his enemies, and rebuilt his life. Not in spite of what happened, but because of it. He'd been tested and emerged stronger. The mailman had given him a warning. Nolan had turned that warning into a weapon, that violation into victory. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Nolan felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace. Complete, unshakable peace. His house was his again. His life was his again. And anyone who tried to take it would learn what Carrie, Clay, and Anton learned. Some fortresses can't be breached. Some men can't be broken. Nolan James was home, and he was never leaving again. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.